The suspicious death of Mica Miller, wife of controversial South Carolina pastor John Paul Miller, has our attention. Well, it has mine anyway. What really happened to Mica? And what the hell is up with her pastor husband? Well, it's time to do a deep dive. The show starts now. So, the death of Mica Miller has captivated online conspiracy theorists who, rightfully so, find it hard to believe she killed herself. The reason we have questions has a lot to do with her husband, his odd behavior, and the details surrounding what sure sounds like a toxic AF marriage. But let's start with this sermon from her husband, John Paul Miller, who, on the day after she was found dead, said this in front of his congregation. Watch.
After the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building. And so y'all can stand to your feet. Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give for the next little bit. 'Cause I don't want to have. I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks. I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're gonna have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can. Yeah, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come. But just keep our family in your prayers.
Why someone would get on a stage and announce the suicide of their own wife in front of an audience, well, that's sociopath behavior, in my opinion. But there's more disturbing details about the whole thing. So though the medical examiner did rule her death to be a suicide, her family members have come forward saying Mica confided in them that if something happened to her, John Paul would be involved. Her family also accuses him of brainwashing her. Her death also comes after reports that he had previously slashed her tires, admitted to posting a topless photo of her online, and installed a tracking device on her vehicle. Mica also filed for divorce days before taking her own life. So there's a lot of there, and I want to take a closer look with someone who has studied this mysterious case inside and out, independent journalist Jackson Gosnell. All right, Jackson. So this has captivated a lot of people, particularly when they see the videos of him standing there after his wife committed suicide. Being a narcissist is what I would diagnose him with, although I'm not anybody that is qualified to give a diagnosis, just my personal take on that. But there's a lot to this case, and people are really confused by it. So I want to do a little bit of a deep dive here. We know that they didn't have the best relationship, right? We know toxic, the slashing of the tires, the tracking device, all that. What more can you tell us that you've learned about this weird relationship?
So I've learned a lot. It's a bizarre case, and it's really captivated a lot of people in South Carolina, and really all over the country for that matter. You know, what started raising eyeballs was that this pastor decided to go on with his regularly scheduled Sunday sermon after learning that someone he allegedly loved deeply, his wife, had just been found dead in North Carolina. So he allegedly cracked jokes through the service, was just, going on willy-nilly, and all of a sudden at the end decides to say, oh, hey guys, by the way, my wife had a self-induced death yesterday, but please still support the church, right? Continue to give. I don't know how long I'm going to be out, but he appears very fine at church. And so people started asking questions then, and the story only got weirder.
Yeah, he also made a remark about how he thought that he saw her, maybe that she was raised from the dead. It just ended up being her sister or something to that effect. Very, very weird here. But when you really dive into this person, this John Paul Miller himself, I don't know what kind of pastors y'all have in South Carolina, but something's weird here. There's been allegations of him having, maybe addictions to porn, things of that nature, posting a topless photo of his wife online. Don't know if that was for blackmail purposes, but when you've done some digging into him, what more did you find there?
So he's a very questionable person. He seemed to be very chatty with women. I don't know about within the congregation, but certainly out in the community. As he was going through this divorce, he allegedly met this waitress who I interviewed last week and left his phone number on his receipt. And so she naturally texted him. He asked her for nude photos.
Oh.
Meanwhile, he's still married to this woman during that time. And so then she decided to text him after Mica's death and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I guess just fishing to see what he would say. To which he replied, "Lots new, LOL." And said that he would have to talk soon. So, if he really loved her, right, then how could he first go to church the next day, but then be into all these other women as well? Has a history of abusive actions, according to court documents. And some really great reporting by News Nation has found all sorts of evidence and affidavits and court documents into this case. The family has long alleged that he was controlling. Mica has met him when she was 10 years old, according to reports,
Wow.
because he was a leader in the church that she was at. So there was this apparent grooming that started a long while ago, which only just raises even more doubt about this. And her death was ruled a suicide. But when we look at John Paul, who has a barrage of wild actions following this, some people aren't satisfied that it was a suicide. Now, I listened to the 911 call. Some people have varying opinions of it, but yeah, a lot of people really not satisfied with him. He, by the way, has since been relieved of his duties at the church.
Oh, well, that's what did it. Okay.
Yeah.
The history of all the other things that he had done prior to that weren't enough. But now, maybe you either killed somebody or you led someone to kill themselves. Even the accusation or the shadow of the doubt of that, to me, that's probably not a good reason to be in front of a church and a congregation. Very, very weird to me. But talk about the death itself. Even if it was a suicide. If you are so bad and you are so intimidating and you are so awful that you drive someone to suicide, that seems like there's something there too. That she seemed like she was crying out for help. And it seemed like people were seeing the signs of her crying out for help. What more do you know about her and kind of her background in all this?
Sure. So she posted on Facebook multiple videos about abusive behaviors and going through divorce and how, God doesn't like divorce, but he doesn't like abuse either. And it seemed to really, go through the messaging that she was dealing with at that time. And it's also interesting because a lot of his Sunday preachings were related to things that were happening in their life. And sometimes he would disguise it as, a friend told me this, but it would be a situation that we've now learned was a situation in their own marriage. And so it's a very unusual way of going about your Sunday sermon as a pastor. But speaking to her death, she's found dead in a park, right? She calls 911. She says, "I'm going to harm myself. I want my family to find me." By the way, the dispatcher was like, "Okay." And so a lot of people are wondering, maybe they need to be more training in that area.
Yeah, you'd think.
But anyway, so she allegedly kills herself, right? And her belongings are found, a ways from her body. And so the water is stagnant. So this week, the family has said there's no way she could have killed herself and started in this spot and the body be found tens of, feet over in the opposite direction. The water is stagnant. It's not moving. And so they have some questions about that. There was apparently some live rounds found. There was also a bullet in a tree that I've heard about. Some people have argued that she tried to kill herself before and the gun jammed. Maybe she shot the tree to make sure the gun was going to work. But there's renewed questions. The FBI is reportedly now involved, and the family is looking into legal options against John Paul. I'm not sure what avenue they're going to take with that, but I do hear that they're looking into it.
Does he have an alibi as to where he was during this time?
He does. He was apparently in Charleston at some sort of sporting event. So he wasn't nearby, according to police. They have some cameras showing his vehicle in another location during all of this. And I think some people are still raising questions about that. Obviously, the police has provided a very detailed PowerPoint, I should add. They've provided it. I mean, it's very detailed, but people still have doubts, rightfully so. And I think all of that stems from his behavior following this death.
I saw in the Daily Mail, I believe it was, that now he's all out dating, cuddling up with women already. Another weird behavior. This really brings to mind, I think it's Lacey Peterson I mentioned to you, that whole Scott Peterson thing. This seems very similar to that. It seems very similar. I mean, I would say Casey Anthony a little bit, where like somebody very close to you dies.
Yeah.
and you're out partying and then they try to pass it off as like that's the grieving process. It's very weird to me. It's sociopath behavior. Again, not a medical professional. I can't diagnose that. I can't diagnose someone as a narcissist or a sociopath, but I mean, there's something going on here with this person, this John Paul. How anybody else come forward, and, exes of his or anything else that have said, hey, listen, this guy's no good?
Well, the whole community pretty much knows that the guy is no good. I mean, in interviews with news media, everybody in the community has this gray cloud over this church. They're known for sweeping things under the rug. The pastor's known for his, ungodly behavior,
Yeah.
shall we say. And so this wasn't very surprising to the community. It was surprising to everybody else because we don't know about him. We just know that he's up preaching after his wife dies. And so, just talking with community members, everybody's always been very weary of him. You look at the police reports, how he puts a tracking device on her car. He's keeping an eye on her. He's texting her harassing messages. And this is supposed to be a man of God, right? Somebody
Right.
who's up on a pedestal that his congregation looks up to. And for him to do all of these things, it seems very unchristian like, certainly. And, I think a lot of people are pretty upset with him. I have tried to reach him for comment. He's not interested in talking to me, as one would expect, but we'll see where this goes. It's shocking.
I just wonder if this all comes out and he eventually, sometimes it takes a long time to get something on somebody or to tie them to something, even if he's not directly involved. It just seems like there's a lot there. Also, other weird videos of him that have come out beyond that one that,
Yeah.
his sermon. I have one that I want to play. Let's take a look at this one. This very stable character. Right. Well, so I'm assuming that you've seen this video. I have not seen it yet, so I don't know what the heck is going on here. I don't know if he's just really cozy with the grass.
So apparently he's undergoing some sort of a medical episode, and he wants to talk about how she's got these mental problems, and people are saying, oh, clearly he has issues as well.
Yeah, no kidding. He's got a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Very bizarre. I also think him talking about her mental health, that just seems to me to be really disturbing that he would just openly talk, use her as fodder for his sermon after she has killed herself. I mean, there's got to be the community there. They still go to his church, though. I mean, look into the video, there's people in seats.
There are, and that's what's so bizarre. And what's crazy about this case is there's something new at every turn.
Right.
I've laid out these events, but if we were to go start to finish, we would be here for 2.5 days because it's just so wild. I don't know if you've heard about the obituary. The
No.
obituary was even written very strangely. It gave praise to the husband, would talk about how he was the best pastor in the world, and his wife would acknowledge that. And she would tell him after every sermon that he was the greatest preacher in the world and that he was the funniest preacher in the world. Just really unusual things. And
Did
by
he
the way,
write that?
apparently it was penned by him. I haven't been able to confirm that, but other reports say that he wrote that obituary, and it's in parentheses, but certainly unusual to include in an obituary.
Yeah, he sounds like he loves himself quite a bit here. In people following this is obviously, there's a lot of people that love the true crime genre and they love to follow it. And you obviously love to follow it. What about this case made you say, I want to look into this a little deeper?
Well, I think it's just how someone who is a community leader, a pastor, how he goes on with life in a very traditional fashion. He doesn't seem bothered by all of this. He's just continuing his normal daily life. And you would expect somebody, a reasonable person, me or yourself, to be very upset. We had just lost a very close loved one. He continues about life as normal. But not only that, it's the fact that he's a pastor and he's up preaching the next day. You would need some immediate time off to grieve and, reflect on yourself and so forth. And he just didn't do that. And his actions following that were also very strange. Even before that, from now what we've learned, him, on that video, suffering from all sorts of issues. He's had substance abuse problems as well. And I think it was just the idea that he's supposed to be a godly person that people look up to. And clearly he's not. That captivated everyone's attention. There's also really unusual things that he's known to have said to his congregation, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to their relationship. And it's kind of interesting because in that moment the congregation's like, oh, he's just telling a story, but looking back and knowing what we know, he was talking about his life through way of messaging. I think he was delivering his sermons directly to her and saying, here's the situation, here's how I would suggest you improve, but doing it in an indirect way. It's very odd.
I mean, there's a lot of men that do that. They don't necessarily drive people to suicide, maybe in some cases, but I mean, that to me, if I hate when people talk about toxic masculinity, but if there's anybody that maybe suffers from that, it sounds like it's this John Paul Miller fella. What can you tell us about the North Carolina? If they're in South Carolina, she's found dead in North Carolina. Is there any description of why that happened that
Yeah,
way?
so let me just give you a bit of a timeline. So she left home and she apparently Googled parks near me, and this park was a ways from her apartment in Myrtle Beach. She drove out to the park, it was in North Carolina, but along the way, she stopped to buy a gun. It's the same gun found at the scene. A lot of people were wondering about that. But not only that, she also stopped to get some, I think, a drink and gas or something. And the store owner gave an interview recently, and he said that she didn't seem unusual at all. And even on the call, it wasn't like she was in real shambles or anything. She was just talking, as you and I would right now. But in terms of the investigation, so it crossed state lines. They've requested the FBI, as I understand, to help with this case. There's been some corruption allegations regarding the police agency there in North Carolina who was investigating. I think those have since subsided, but there were some significant problems years ago with that law enforcement agency that
Okay,
I've
let's
read
dig into that
into.
a little bit. What are they accused of?
I think they're just accused of covering up a lot of things, and if
Mm,
you know somebody, you can get things taken care of.
okay.
It seems they've gotten a handle on that situation now, at least from what I was able to find. I don't know a ton of details about how they were corrupt, but I know there was widespread reporting about it
Okay.
decades ago. So. In the beginning, people were saying, oh, well, that sheriff's office is totally corrupt anyway, so I don't believe a word that they're saying. But they've been very detailed. I think that's why we got the very thorough PowerPoint presentation outlining all the events of the case as well, including the 911 call where she said, hey, I'm about to end my life and I want my family to find me.
Yeah.
But again, they're raising the questions of how can her belongings be found in one place and then 50 or so feet away is her body in a body of water that would have had to drift down, and this is still water. It's not moving.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there's just a lot of questions. But surveillance video does show that she is by herself when she goes and buys the gun, when she goes into the gas station, etc. So, yeah, a lot of doubt even with the evidence that we've seen.
Have you talked to the family?
I texted a little bit with the sister. She referred me to the family attorney. She was not really interested in getting in the weeds of the case, but that was also very early on. I haven't reached out to her since then. They just made clear that they want to use hashtag justice for Mica because they still have a lot of questions about this case.
Sounds like the family never liked him. They never liked the relationship. And I mean, for obvious reasons, he doesn't sound like the most stable of fellas. I also read, and you can confirm this for me, but I also read, I believe again, was on the Daily Mail, that those two actually met while they were both in other relationships, that they had cheated together.
I understand that he did. I'm not so sure about her, but I understand that he cheated in order to meet her. And I
Mm.
also heard that she looked after his children as
Oh.
well during this time. So some affair definitely going on there. And I think that just speaks to the part of this case that he's not this godly figure that he portrays.
What's weird is that these ungodly things surfaced before his wife took her own life. So why people would still go and listen to somebody like that? I mean, maybe they don't care. Maybe his sermons were just that good, but it just sounds really unconventional to me. So in following this, what's next? What's next on, I guess, on the list of things that you're following or that you're looking for, or what would give you like a sense of clarity or closure on this case, or will there never be one, maybe?
Well, I think the lawsuit that this family is trying to bring against him will open a lot of doors. I think we'll get some new answers and information. We'll see if he's held accountable for his actions. And obviously, according to the facts of the case that we have, he wasn't standing there shooting her. But there's a lot of belief that he led her to do this. And if that's true, we'll
Hmm.
see what a judge decides is reasonable and fair to hand down to him. Will he get jail time? Will he have to pay something? What will that outcome be? I think that'll be a closure for a lot of people because while He's not at the scene, according to the facts of the case. He's not the one who pulled the trigger. He has a lot of involvement with this. There's a lot of abuse allegations, the tracker on the car, the slashing of the tires, all these unusual things that he's alleged to have done and confirms to doing in some cases, like posting the topless photo. That goes down this rabbit hole that I think really needs to be explored, and I hope that the lawsuit does that. I hope we're able to gain some light into his knowledge, and maybe if there's accountability, we'll see what that looks like. But I'm hopeful that lawsuit will help us get to the end where this family can have some closure, because they're very broken naturally. I was reading that the sister of Mica Miller said, "If I die, I didn't do it. JP did it." And so that's why this family is so driven. They are steadfast in their mission to get justice for this case, and they do not believe she did it. And frankly, after going over a lot of this, I can tell you that the facts say she did it, but I have uncertainty myself.
That she was coerced. I mean, that's not the first time that's happened. I think her telling her family, "Listen, if something happens to me, this is the guy that did it." I mean, I think that is really important here. If he'll ever be brought to true justice, or there'll be enough evidence to charge him with anything, I mean, at least people can stop going to the dang church.
Right.
At least maybe stop following this guy. Like, if there's anybody that deserves to be canceled, it might be him.
I want to speak about the church just for a second. I tried to reach the church for comment. They also were not interested in talking. And interestingly, they shut their website down. So you try and go to their website, it no longer exists. It existed at the beginning of this. Now that everybody's talking about it, they don't want to be seen, I guess. They've taken their website offline. You can't comment on their social media posts. They've disabled commenting. And I texted, I believe, the church administrator, and I was left on red. So they're not interested in chatting either.
Are you going to go to the church?
I've thought about it. I don't know that I would get any true answers. I think everyone's being tight-lipped. They realize the gravity of the situation now. They realize this is not looking good for Solid Rock. And I think they're worried that if they speak, they'll somehow damage the church's reputation even more. That's to say that if they still had a reputation, I'm not so sure how many people are going to be showing up on Sunday morning.
It might be a good time to find another church.
Right.
I would say that. I mean, those people... Oh, there's a lot coming out about the Carolinas recently.
Yes.
I mean, there's been a lot of crimes, or high profile, I should
Yes.
say. It's just some weird stuff going on. But you're digging into it, and we'll keep following you. Where can people follow you so that they can get the latest on this case and on other cases that you're following?
Yeah, just on my social media channels. I'm on everywhere, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, all those at Jackson Gosnell. So if you want to find more South Carolina news and really any news of that nature, I follow politics pretty closely as well.
Well, let's hope that there's not another murder-suicide investigation coming out of the
Right.
Carolinas. They could take a break for a little while. They're doing a little too much. Thank you so much for being
Yes,
here in
it's great to be with
Nashville.
you.
I certainly appreciate it. And, if we have any other wild cases go on in Nashville, we hope that you'll be on them, because it sounds like you get to the bottom of it. So
Of
we really
course.
appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Of course. All right, folks, that does it for this special episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. A reminder, you can find full episodes of every show at our YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. You can also catch me Sunday night on the Big Weekend Show at 7 p.m. Eastern on Fox News. But I will see you right back here Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Happy Memorial Day weekend. And from Nashville, God bless and take care.